Hello and welcome to another Baldur's Gate 3 build video. In today's video I'll be showing you my origin character build for Lae'zel, Champion of the Comet. Now of course this build can work on any other character just fine, I just chose this to be a very fitting build for Lae'zel as a character. So of course we're picking Lae'zel, we are a Githyanki, our class will be Fighter and we will be a pure fighter for 12 levels, specifically Biomaster, but there will be a little bit of a twist, which I will mention later once we get to the respecking. For our fighting style, we are going weapon fighting, a very fitting for a Githyanki's character. Most of the Githyanki anyway wield great weapons. Background soldier, we can't really change this. And for our ability scores, for the first few levels, we are going with the sort of default fighter setup. So 17 strength, 14 dexterity, 16 constitution, 10 wisdom. After we reach the grove and get the withers, we'll be changing this to the actual build's setup. Alright, so now let's say you got withers and you reach the grove. First thing I would suggest you to do is to go and buy elixirs of heal giant strength from Auntie Ethel. She'll be very important for this build as she will be the main trader you will go to, and you want to stock up on the elixirs so that you have them as a supply for Acts 2 and until you reach Act 3, so whether you can buy them more easily. I would suggest around 20 elixirs to last you throughout the entire game. It does depend on how often you long rest. If you're somebody who long rests a lot, you will need more maybe. If you're somebody who long rests very few times, then you could be fine with less. I usually shoot for around 20 of those elixirs. So now, we got the grove, we bought elixirs, we got the withers and we respec. This is your ability score setup. We are of course remaining a fighter. We are just changing our ability scores. We are dumping strength, we have the elixirs for that. We are taking 17 dexterity, 16 constitution, 14 wisdom, 10 charisma. Now for this, we want 17 dexterity. This will make us versatile in both melee and ranged attacks, and of course gives us good initiative. And we will be focusing on dexterity in our other level ups. Constitution 16, explanatory, you want high HP as a fighter. Wisdom 14, this helps us save against some of the annoying spells like Hold Person, and then 10 Charisma is just to help us in dialogue situations so that we don't have a negative. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll be sticking purely to the fire, so we can just skip to level 3. We are going Biomaster for your maneuvers. I would suggest Trip Attack, Repost, and Disarming Attack. You can pick any other ones if you prefer. I find these ones to be very useful in the early game, as Disarming Attack lets you disarm more of the dangerous enemies. Example, the Githyanki Patrol. The warrior there, she's particularly dangerous because her Githyanki Greatsword deals an additional 1d4 psionic damage. And of course, Trip Attack is great always to have. If you knock somebody prone, you have advantage against them. Level 4, we get our first feat, and as I mentioned earlier, we'll be dumping it into dexterity. Do note, if you take the Auntie Ethel's deal and you get her hair, pick dexterity so that you can round it up to nice 20 dexterity. Level 5, we get our extra attack, and that's about it. Level 6, we get our second feat, and here I would suggest you take Savage Attacker. Or of course, if you prefer, you can just grade Great Weapon Master. I will be going with Savage Attacker. For level 7, we get 2 additional maneuvers. Here, I would suggest you take Precision Attack. Of course, a great maneuver. It just decreases your chance of hitting your target. And a Menacing Attack. Great or low debuff. If you make an enemy frightened, they can't move and they get disadvantage on attack and ability checks. Level 8, we get our third feat. Here you have a choice. Do you want Great Weapon Master or Heavy Armor Master? Of course, going Heavy Armor Master, you get 1 strength, which is wasted since you're using elixirs, but you do get the second trait of this, which is incoming damage from non-magical attacks, also decreases by 3 while you're wearing heavy armor. This is relatively useful, as will be also a pretty tanky character. Or in this case, I will just go with the Great Weapon Master, as at this point of the game you should have a relatively reliable chance of hitting your targets, on top of actually knocking them prone. Level 9, we just get our class feature Indomitable. We can't really choose here. Level 10, we get 2 additional maneuvers. Now here, honestly, just pick whatever, it doesn't really matter. I will just go with goading attack and pushing attack. Level 11, we get our improved extra attack. This just cranks our damage output to another level. And level 12, we get our fourth and final feat, which will be Heavy Armor Master. If you have any other preferences, you can choose a different one, or a great choice as well would be the Sharpshooter. Since you will at Act 3 be able to have 22 dexterity, you will be very strong with your ranged attacks as well as your melee attacks. So this is where that great versatility comes from. You can have Great Weapon Master and Sharpshooter for just insane damage output on both ends. But I like Heavy Armor Master more in this case. Okay, so let's get into the equipment for this build. Let's start with the elixirs. As I mentioned before, these will be very important. So elixir of Hill Giant Strength and Cloud Giant Strength. The best way to stock up on a lot of Hill Giant Strength elixirs is to buy them from Auntie Ethel. And the fastest way to sort of reset the trader's stock is to send one character to camp, have them respec at Withers, and every time you level that character up, you want to go to Auntie Ethel and buy the Hill Giant Strength Elixir. You can use 2 characters for this. One is buying, one is leveling up. That way you just hop between the 2 and get a lot of them. And until you have the desired number of these elixirs. The second one is the Cloud Giant Strength Elixir, obviously the more powerful one, which you don't get access to until maybe late Act 2 and Act 3. Just buy these whenever you see one at the trader. For our headgear, I went with the Circle of Psionic Revenge. When you succeed a saving throw, the foe that caused the saving throw takes 1d4 psionic damage. Githyanki also gain a +1 to Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma saving throws. There are, of course, better items for this, for the headgear, but I sort of went for the more thematic item here. As you would notice, a lot of the Githyanki just wear circlets instead of helmets. And the only Githyanki that do wear helmets are the warriors, but we don't have access to any of the helmets anyway, so I went with this. For our cloak, I went with the Flesh Melter Cloak. Whenever a creature deals melee damage to the wearer, that creature takes 1d4 acid damage. A decent cloak, there are maybe better options, just pick your preference here, I just went with this. For our armor here, I went with Armor of Persistence. All incoming damage is reduced by 2. You gain Resistance and Blade Ward. This is, I think, without an argument, the best armor in the game, if you're looking for stats and tankiness, because the fact that it grants you Blade Ward, it halves all of the slashing, bludgeoning, and piercing damage. That's not magical, and further reduces all damage by 2. Just a great tanky item. For our gloves, I went with the Gauntlets of the War Master. Targets have disadvantage on saving throws against your maneuver and weapon actions. Great gloves for this character, as we'll be utilizing heavily our Bilemaster maneuvers, and it even works with the Soulbreaker effect we get from our weapon. For the boots, I went with Armor of Persistence. You gain freedom of movement along Strider. Freedom of movement here is particularly very useful, as your movement speed can be reduced by difficult terrain spells and magical effects, and you can't be paralyzed or restrained. So essentially, enemies will have a really hard time disabling you. Only thing that could disable you is like the stun from the ballists, which I guess if you want you could get Baldur's Helmet, which then makes it so you can't be stunned or critically hit. For our amulet, I went with Surgeon's Subjugation Amulet. Once per long rest, when scoring a critical hit on a humanoid, the wearer can paralyze the target for 2 turns. This is an amazing amulet which synergizes really well with our ring here, the Killer's Sweetheart. When you kill a creature, your next attack roll will be a critical hit. Once spent, this effect refreshes after a long rest. So if you kill a creature, you then can choose if you want to critically hit or not your next target. This is an effect that you have a choice. You can use it or you don't need to use it. So you can combo this really well with the amulet. You critical hit somebody with the ring's effect, and then you, with the critical hit, you can then, with the amulet, paralyze the target for 2 turns, though the target for the amulet to work needs to be a humanoid. And for our second ring, I'm using the Acoustic Band. Your weapon attacks also deal 2 acid damage. Just overall a decent additional damage item. You can choose anything else you wish if you have a preference. For our weapons, we of course go with the Silver Sword of the Astral Plane. When wielded by a Githyanki, this weapon deals additional 1d6 psychic damage. A Githyanki holding this weapon has advantage on Intelligence, Wisdom, Charisma saving throws, has resistance to psychic damage, and cannot be charmed. A very good weapon, and particularly useful as we are going for a theme here. Because alternatively, you could go with the Baldur and Giant Slayer, but I just feel like the Silver Sword of the Astral Plane is much more fitting here thematically. For some of our earlier game options, Act 1 and 2, you can use right off the bat the Everburn Blade, overall great damage weapon, though shame it is not a +1 enchantment weapon. We can replace the Everburn Blade with the Swirlbee's Woundseeker. The wielder gains 1d4 bonus to attack rolls with this weapon when attacking creatures that have already taken damage. So if a creature is wounded, you have an additional chance of hitting them. Then when we deal with the Githyanki Patrol, you can get the Githyanki Greatsword, the only Githyanki Greatsword that isn't a sort of special weapon that has the additional 1d4 psionic damage if you are a Gith. Then in the Githyanki Crash, you can get the Soulbreaker Greatsword, a weaker version of the Silver Sword of the Astral Planes, has the same 1d4 psionic damage, but gives you additional +2 to initiative, and it also gives you the great effect of the Soulbreaker. You have a chance to stun any target when you use this attack. As you can see here, the Silver Sword of the Astral Plane also has this. And finally, for our ranged weapon, I went with Tidal String Bow. This weapon deals additional damage equal to a strength modifier. So this is the weapon that makes our range attacks actually useful, because it shows here 9 to 16 damage, but this is only taking into consideration the dexterity modifier. Because when we actually deal damage, instead of 9 to 16, it will be 14 to 21, because we get, well, in this case, +8 from our strength chase, but we'll be mostly running with the Hill Giant Elixir, which gives us +5. So with the Collar Giant, it's going to be +8. So this is going to be even more. It's going to be like, what, 17 to 23? So your ranged attacks almost hit as hard as your melee attacks. Almost. Not there yet, but almost. If you chose the Sharpshooter, then they deal the same damage. So here we are again at the Flaming Fists Barracks for another battle showcase. So generally with this character, you don't really have to think too much, just find who is the most dangerous target or annoying target or somebody you really want to whack the most and just go for it. So for this, I want to really get rid of this wizard. So we're just going to shoot her to see the damage rolls with the Titan String Bow. Because with this bow, we essentially have Sharpshooter. Of course, if we had Sharpshooter itself, our damage would just double. So damage roll is 4, we rolled average. We got +6 from dexterity. I'm not sure where the +1 is coming from. We got a +8 from strength modifier, so we got an 18. So the lowest damage we should technically be able to roll is a 1 here, +5. I will ignore this because I'm not sure where is this coming from. This is weird. But 1 +5 +8, so that's 6, and this is 14. So the lowest we technically roll is 14. Basically, we have Sharpshooter. If we did have Sharpshooter, it will be 24. So that's kind of nuts. Because if you look here, it's 26 from the main hand attack from melee because of the Weapon Master. So you could go Sharpshooter, but remember I went with Heavy Armor Master, and with the Armor Persistence, we can essentially just YOLO it and just go for whatever. It doesn't matter. Nobody really should be able to hurt us that much. So now let's try to use the Soulbreaker on this fist here to see what her rolls will be. Will she be lucky and get an +20 or something? She did not. She got stunned. So let's see. She rolled a 4 with disadvantage, +2 from Constitution. So this is 22. Essentially, she needs a +20 to save against this. Let's choose a more beefy fist here who might have a higher chance getting a save. Let's try to disarm this guy, for example. We won't use any of these, but you can see here the Executioner is from the ring, the Killer's Sweetheart ring. If we click this, we would critically strike him, and then after that we will get the Surgeon Subjugation proc, which we can choose to paralyze him. And I believe if you select the Executioner here, if he saves, this would guarantee that he doesn't save. So he would drop the weapon regardless, but we won't use it. So he dropped the weapon. Let's see, what is the roll? He rolled an 8, so a little bit bigger. +3 from proficiency and +5 from strength. So he doesn't need a +20. The DC is 20 here, but he doesn't need a +20. He just needs to roll a little bit better on the actual roll here. But disadvantage will almost always, well, not almost always, most of the time will ensure that they fail. So we could try to do the same on him, see if he will save. And so far we are 3 for 3, so 3 failures. What did he get? He got a 5 plus he's the same thing. What about the cleric? Yeah, now we'll get the opportunity to attack from both of these guys. They deal 0 damage because of our armor and defeat. Let's try to disarm her. Oh, she got a nat 1. Yeah. Okay, so she doesn't have any bonuses at all. Although because it's a nat 1, it doesn't actually show them. And if we if we strike her again, she'll just die. But let's say, I don't know, for whatever reason you're fighting an enemy who has a lot of armor and your hit chance is not 1995, you can always turn off Great Weapon Master, and you can then, if the chance is still low, you can try to knock them prone. This will probably kill her. Yeah, it will. You knock them prone for advantage, and then you can turn on the Great Weapon Master. If you don't like the chance and it's still low somehow for this to hit, you can always just precision strike them, right? And yeah, so basically that's the build, that's the idea of combat. Disarm them, pick their weapons up, or if not, just knock them prone, do whichever one of these you think is situationally good, and yeah, just keep on smacking them. So there you go, that's the build. I hope you enjoyed. Feel free to leave some comments down below with any questions or suggestions you might have, and I hope you enjoyed. Take care.